After their recent appearance in the Book of Boba Fett, there's been a resurgence in interest in the Tusken Raiders. Through the eyes of Fett, we got to see how they were far more than savage monsters like Anakin Skywalker may have wanted you to believe. They had culture, customs, and humanity, and many fans fell in love with their strange charm. But Boba Fett was far from the first person the Sand People adopted. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, there lived a Jedi named Sharad who would one day find himself the warlord of a Tusken tribe. His story is very different from Boba Fett's, and in many ways, far more tragic. This is the tale of a Jedi Knight who exiled himself to the sands of Tatooine and chose the Sand People over his brothers in the Jedi Order.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Sharad was a human male born during the time of the High Republic decades before the invasion of Naboo. Born in the Outer Rim, Sharad was discovered as Force-sensitive in his infancy and taken in by the Jedi Order at a very young age. His parents willingly surrendered their son since it was considered an honor to have your child become a Jedi. While training at the Jedi Academy on Coruscant, Sharad was eventually taken on as a Padawan by Jedi Master Eeth Koth. Master Koth was a well-respected Jedi and a member of the Jedi Council during the last days of the Order. Right away, Master and Padawan formed a strong bond. Koth was patient and disciplined, and he admired the dedicated young Jedi. Despite what the Jedi Code said about Jedi avoiding attachments, his master allowed young Het to remain in contact with his family back in the Outer Rim, even if they didn't speak that frequently. After many years of training under his master, Het advanced to the rank of Jedi Knight, taking the specialization of Jedi Guardian. He was particularly skilled in the art of lightsaber combat, but that didn't mean he was lacking when it came to Force abilities. He also excelled at surviving in hostile environments, and this would serve him well later in life. As a Jedi, Sharad quickly rose to fame, surpassing his master's legacy. To give you an idea of how badass this guy was, here are some of the nicknames he earned after his many exploits across the galaxy. Howl Runner, the Hound of Worlds, the Tamer of Tyrants, the Nemesis of Kim, the Defender of Camperus, the Champion of Krumar, and the Nemesis of Pirates. You can't tell us those aren't some of the coolest nicknames you've ever heard. This guy was such a legend, he had the balls to refer to Qui-Gon Jinn, one of the most badass Jedi to ever live, as an old rascal. Certainly, no one can argue that Het was a respected Jedi who seemed to take pride in his work. So what led this devoted Jedi Knight to abandon the Order? All the praise Sharad had received for his heroic deeds throughout the years may have brought him fame, but it didn't make him happy. More and more, Het came to resent his peers for their admiration and pride. He believed the Jedi were growing conceited, seeking prestige instead of humility like the Jedi Code taught. This growing disquiet combined with homesickness pushed Het away from his Jedi family and toward his biological family, which he hadn't seen in years. When Het returned to Coruscant after a difficult mission in 47 BBY, he was greeted with cheers and congratulations by his fellow Jedi. But it wasn't them he wanted to see. Instead, he sought out his former master, Eeth Koth, for what he felt was a long overdue heart-to-heart. In a touching scene, Het confessed to his beloved master that he could no longer see himself as a Jedi and wanted to leave the Order. Despite how much this news upset the old Zabrak, Master Koth accepted Het's resignation and allowed him to step away from his Jedi life forever. A Jedi no longer, all Het dreamed of was returning home and spending the rest of his days with his family. Because he stayed in contact with them after he was brought to the Jedi Temple, he still loved and cared for them deeply. But fate has a way of turning cruel when we least expect it, and Het soon found himself in the ruins of his former home. During his long absence, Off-world raiders had razed his homeworld to the ground, destroying every city, town, and village, and murdering everyone, including Het's entire family. For the first time ever, Het was truly alone. Blinded by grief, Het returned to his ship and left, vowing never to return to the Republic or the Jedi that had failed him and his people. While flying through the Outer Rim territories, he crash landed on Tatooine and chose to remain there in exile for the rest of his days. Rather than taking residence in one of the many desert cities scattered across the planet, Het kept to the desert itself, where he eventually came into contact with the tribe of Tusken Raiders. As many of you may remember from the Book of Boba Fett, the Tuskens weren't known to be very welcoming to outsiders. Het, however, was persistent and patient. Over time, he integrated himself into their society and became their warlord. Thanks to his extensive training, he coached the Sand People on new ways of fighting. Tuskens weren't the only people he trained, however. Among the Tuskens, he met a woman named Kashek, who had been taken as a child and raised with the Tusken tribe. The two were married and had a son together, whom Sharad named Asharad and trained in the ways of the Jedi. From all this, we can surmise that Sharad Het was a man who valued family, whether that was his biological family in the Outer Rim, his Jedi brothers and sisters, or his newfound family of Tuskens and his wife and son. Although the deserts of Tatooine were harsh and unforgiving environments, Het was happy to live out the rest of his days in the dunes. But once again, fate sought to screw him. Sharad enjoyed a decade of relative happiness, and then his world was torn asunder once more. To rid himself of stockpiles of outdated weapons, Jabba the Hutt, the daimyo of Tatooine, incited a war between the Tusken Raiders who lived in the deserts and the city dwellers of Tatooine. The two had managed an uneasy coexistence, but under Jabba's influence, horrific battles broke out all across the Dune Sea. As their warlord, Het led the Tusken tribes. Despite the war he waged, he was still a Jedi at heart, so he prioritized protecting civilians and preventing as many war crimes as possible. As the conflict escalated, word of it spread through the galaxy. When the Jedi on Coruscant reviewed footage of one of the battles, they were stunned to see the Tusken leader dressed in full Sand People attire, wielding a crimson lightsaber. Though the color had changed, the saber hilt was unmistakably Sharad's. His Coruscant colleagues put two and two together and realized that Sharad was still alive, though, if you ask us, it really isn't that surprising that someone called the Tamer of Tyrants and the Hound of Worlds managed to survive on his own for a decade. As was typical of the Jedi, they couldn't leave anything well enough alone and sent Master Ki-Adi-Mundi to retrieve their errant brother. They assumed that Het must have fallen to the dark side and would attack any Jedi sent to find him. Ki-Adi-Mundi was selected because the Council was confident he was the only Jedi skilled enough to defeat Het in a duel without getting too sentimental about it. When Master Mundi arrived on Tatooine, he quickly found Sharad Het and his Force-sensitive son. Het was disappointed that the Jedi hadn't sent Qui-Gon Jinn, whom he respected greatly, but he was even more upset when he learned of Qui-Gon's death. Neither the murder of his old friend nor the re-emergent Sith threat were enough to convince Het to return to the Jedi, however. He left that life behind him over a decade ago and had a family that needed him. His dedication to the Tuskens was what ultimately got him killed. In 32 BBY, following intelligence gathered by the bounty hunter Aurra Sing, the Hutts launched a surprise attack on the main Tusken encampment. During the battle, Het fought alongside his Tusken tribemen and was confronted by Aurra Sing. Even though Sing was extremely skilled with the lightsaber, Het was a class above her. Although he hadn't sparred another saber user in a decade, he was still able to match her ferocity. If Sing hadn't employed Dan Mok, which was essentially darkside trash talking, he would have likely won. It was enough to distract Het for a split second, and that was all Sing needed to stab him straight through the heart. Het's legacy didn't end there, however. His son, Asharad Het, would go on to become a respected Jedi under the tutelage of Master Ki-Adi-Mundi before falling to the dark side and becoming the terrifying Sith known as Darth Krayt. But that's a story for another day. Thus ends the story of Sharad Het, Jedi, Warlord, Father. A tale full of tragic loss and familial devotion that rivals any Skywalker saga. But what do you think? Between Boba Fett and Sharad Het, who made a better Tusken? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.